I spent almost 20 years, almost 2 decades working in New York um, in digital marketing, advertising, ad tech, martech. I work for some of the top advertising agencies in New York. As a contractor, and the technology companies that I was working with. Every step of the way, there were some amazing companies I worked for, but I was involved very early on. A part of the newest technologies coming into the agencies and the largest brands on how to target. When I first worked at NBC, there was no way for even the advertising agencies to bill digital if they were buying TV. So, I mean, it was right at the beginning. And, the more and more technology as social came around, I was always kind of in the tech that was right ahead of the curve. And I was always good at, I guess, presenting a vision to, a lot of these companies. And I had some amazing clients along the way. And again, worked with some technology. A lot of it was vaporware, you know, um, wasn't yet implemented. Um, but what you could see is that as time was going on over this time, I could see, because I was so involved in not as much the content in the beginning, but how to distribute the content and target the right people, and how to extract that data for engagement. Like, I was involved in the first engagement-based digital video. Um, actually getting someone to click to watch. Before that, everything was autoplay. But where I'm going with is um, the amount of data that was beginning to be collected by the largest companies in the world. And you look at the advertising agencies; they're all owned by 6 companies. So it's all consolidation. And yeah, efficiency is part of it, but getting out of it was the best thing that I could do. And I mean, I definitely paid some of the consequences for that um, in a number of ways. But there's no truth in so much of what I was involved in, and at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with the consumers' um, best interest. It always had to do with the brands. Can the brands sink their teeth into more consumers and be able to target them more? And I saw that just you know completely go in a direction that I don't think people understood the consequences of just what that was going to do as it was happening. But I've seen a lot of what it does, and I was involved in a lot with like the machine learning, not on the programming side, but um, I spent time really involved in the machine learning, especially with IBM and Watson. Um, and I will tell you this: that it's not a good future. And one of my biggest initiatives um, that I've been wanting to push forward and have is really it's about the truth, and it's about being able to see beyond the illusion. And I think when it comes to security, I mean, I have, just based on my background, where I've been, what I've been part of in digital advertising and marketing and technology and targeting capabilities, I've seen that all just get to a point now from 20 years ago when I first started, where there's so many data points and everything's just running into this crystalline ball. And, you know, I got a chance to see how it impacted society in a lot of ways. I mean, I was just a part of it, but I was still presenting the vision of whatever technology I was working with to some of the largest brands and agencies in the world. And, that vision of being able to really kind of engage more with your audience kind of went away. And it's just really more about sinking their teeth into as many people as possible. And those agencies are, highly controlled. And, I just believe that people don't realize how impactful the artificial intelligence is in their lives already, because I've been so involved in that. There's a book, it's called Modern Propaganda by Jacob Del Hagen. You can find it on Amazon, but it goes back to 2016 with the political campaigns and the bot swarms that were used, really early on to sway sentiment, and I just think that it's just a good book to give perspective on even how far things have evolved since that book was written, which was, I believe, in like 2014, in that time, for maybe 2016. Sorry. So anyway, the most important thing for me is the following: is to be able to kind of tell the truth and give people some perspective. And what was a great opportunity for me, that I saw with cybersecurity, is that people are affected in ways they don't really understand, subconsciously, just like when they watch television. When they watch television, um, there's so much subliminal advertising that's in there that is sinking in, soaking into their subconscious. People go into a theta state, a beta state, which is a hypnotic state, and brands can just dump their pitches and jingling-a-lings and all that stuff right into someone's mind. And I think that people just don't see it at that level. That was been my background for so long. And I went to school in psychology and communication. So really, just shining some light on just how much technology can influence someone. And there's a few stories, but one that comes to mind: uh, a woman who I believe was a fairly sane, or is a fairly sane woman, um, got hooked up with Chris Stapleton, who she loved, and people that are especially older, are maybe more susceptible to the power of digital and the power of the technology that is, it's kind of behind a veil. So this woman, who was happily married for, a number of years, um, started a conversation with Chris Stapleton. And Chris Stapleton, obviously has his own thing going on, but it was not really Chris Stapleton. Obviously, it was, this lady was being scammed. But the point is that a relationship was built, and you hear about it all the time. But the fact that she was ready to leave her husband, because she thought she was going to get to go marry Chris Stapleton. And, luckily her daughter found her and talked some sense into her. But, when it comes to technology and it comes to security and it comes to just giving people some knowledge and understanding a little bit more on how they can protect themselves, I'll just start with this one story that always just kind of comes to mind. It wasn't too long ago, but a woman who's, married, happily married, loved her husband, but then started getting on to the social media sites, and she loved Chris Stapleton, and Chris Stapleton reached out to her, and clearly it was not Chris Stapleton, but a sane woman. People just, I don't think, realize how much allure there is in digital and how deceptive it is. And you probably hear about the dark forest. I spent 20 years in New York, in advertising, digital advertising and marketing, and I was with, many of the leading technology companies that all related to targeting. So I really saw it from a different angle, and worked with some of the largest companies, the top 4 advertising agencies in the world, and essentially was going in there for various companies that I worked for to provide them with a vision of what this particular technology was going to do. So, I, again, saw it from a different vantage point of how impactful over time in 20 years, what it's done. But going back to the story, this woman started engaging in the conversations, which you guys have probably all heard. And sure enough, this sane woman was so allured because she loved Chris Stapleton, and it was not Chris Stapleton. It was a scammer that pretty much, you know, got her about ready to divorce her husband, and she was ready to get on a plane, and I believe she lost a lot of money, but her daughter was able to talk her into some sense into her just to let her know that